recording, and it may ask you guys to accept. Greetings, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the S5, oh, there's Jose. The S5 mentoring initial meeting, and Coach John, or Dr. John Langford, is going to serve as the lead mentor for the group. Tonight, we'll hear a little bit about the plan for our journey from here to the fly-offs in Missouri in July. Hey, Jose. July 2022, and for certification, the NARTEC program for Jose. So we've got two things kind of going. All of the necessary skills will be taught for both tracks, so not to worry, you're in the right place. I'd like to hand it off to Dr. Langford and his team.
Okay, well, can you hear me okay, Robin?
Yes, we're good.
So so Coach John sounds much better. So let's just go with that. I am going to share my screen. So welcome everybody. I'm John Langford, and I've got a couple of good friends with me here. And in the next 30 minutes or so, what we wanted to try to do was just kind of kick off this process that Robin has gotten started, which we are really, really excited about. And that is getting all of you involved in the U.S. international team for model rockets, or space models as it's called. I'm actually out at Estes right now, which is one of the model rocket companies that exists, that makes all kinds of stuff, but particularly the rocket motors is the big thing that is done out here in Colorado. And with me right now is Nicole, and Nicole is the director of education here at Estes, and she's somebody that all of you, if you don't know her, should get to know her, because she is in charge of the whole program of sort of bringing rocketry to folks like you, to a new generation. And I just wanted her to say just a few words about what's going on at Estes, and the program that is coming up sort of right after this, which is building on TARC. So Nicole, welcome. Thanks for joining us, and it's great to have you here. So welcome to the international team.
Thanks.
Kickoff here.
I can't wait to watch you guys win, and then I'll be able to say that I was there at the first meeting. Yeah, so thanks, John. So we are doing a lot at Estes to help teachers, parents, and students like yourselves get more involved in rocketry, and ultimately help you find a career that you're excited and passionate about. You know, one day you might want to be an engineer, or maybe you want to be a journalist that, you know, covers all of the new launches that Blue Origin or SpaceX is doing. So we're doing a lot of great things here at Estes to help you find what it is that you love to do, whether it's building rockets or taking pictures of rockets. Any of those is exciting. So we have a YouTube channel called Estes Education. So that's going to be a great place for you guys to find any information you might need on how to fold a parachute, how to build a stable rocket. We're going to be developing new content as the year goes on. So we'll be kind of growing as long as like you guys are growing as a team. So we've got that YouTube channel. You can also find more information at edu.estesrockets.com. That's where you're going to be able to find a lot more information on lesson plans, technical reports, things like that, to help you guys as you journey on and competing in the national fly-offs, which is really exciting. And as John just mentioned, we do have a educational session that's going to be live here in just a few minutes, about an hour from now. So if you need the link to that, I think Robin has it.
Yep.
And we are going to be doing a session on how to build and design a custom rocket. So you guys, if you have ever been flown a rocket before, you might have used a kit that had instructions, but you have to kind of move into when you're building a rocket for a competition, you have to build your own rocket. There's no instructions included. So if you guys want a little bit more information or tips and tricks on how to do that, definitely feel free to join us. It'll be some great information. And Robin, we can also just get you the link to the recording if anyone wants that after. So I'm excited to meet all of you. Good luck. And if you need anything from me,
Yeah.
I was a teacher once, so definitely just reach out to me. Robin has all my contact information, and Coach John, so you guys can get in touch with me if you ever need anything.
Fantastic. And I hope, and we will definitely finish this session in time for people to watch it's built park building session.
Yeah,
right?
for
So
the
it's part of-
American Rocketry Challenge, if you guys are familiar with that.
which is another great program to check out. So, well, thanks so much, Nicole. It's
Thanks.
great
Thanks,
to
John.
have you as a guest here.
Yeah.
And we'll see you in less than an hour on you and both the people who run the Estes Education Department are named Nicole. So
We try and keep it easy for
So
everyone.
to make it very easy to remember. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot. I'm
Thank you.
gonna go into screen sharing here and let's see if we can pull this up. Okay. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see. Should see a slide that says, John, you can come on in, that says stepping into the real world of space. Is that what everybody's seeing?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what we're about today, is talking about the believe it or not, there are rocket competitions, and believe it or not, it's bigger than just in the United States. It's internationally. About 36 different countries compete in these competitions in both a junior, which is 18 and under, and on everybody else age category. And these are pictures of two of the recent US teams that went to, I think one of these was from Ukraine in 2016, and one was this Poland in 2018, I think, are the two teams that are shown here. These are the junior teams. And what we're really talking about here today is how to be part of that group, how to join that group. And we're really excited to have the four of you here, arranged from 7th grade, I gather, up to a senior in high school. And what we're going to try to do today and over the next few months is to make it a really great experience for everybody in this. And if there's other people who want to join, we're excited to have that too. It's not limited to just the four of us here. If you have questions, feel free to jump in at any point. This should be a very informal thing. I know there's a way to put up your hand on Zoom, but don't rely on that, because I'm maybe Coach Robin can kind of monitor that, but also just jump in, or you can raise your hand on the camera, whatever. What I thought we would try to do over the next few months is something like this, right? The objective of this group that Coach Robin has organized is kind of three things. We want to introduce you to the art, and it really is an art, of building and flying scale models. These scale models are replicas of real rockets. You hear about those a lot in the news. There's a few rockets that are really famous, and then there's a lot more that are not as famous. But what this is all about is building and flying miniature replicas of those real rockets, and not doing that just in the abstract, but doing it for this particular contest that is coming up in 2023. There are these series of international competitions, and every 2 years there's a world contest, a world championships. And in 2023, it's going to be in the United States for the first time in, like 30 years or so. And so that makes it easier for for those of us here in the US to get to the competition. Generally, we're having to travel overseas, which is a lot of fun, but it's also relatively expensive. And so the fact that it's going to be here in the United States, in Texas, in July of 2023, has spurred us to try to broaden the group of people who are interested in participating in that, and that's really what we're doing. There will be what's called a fly-offs, a team selection, in the summer of 2022, so coming up in about 6 or 7 months, and we'll talk more about that as we go. We're not going to talk that much about either of those things in this initial kickoff, but that's the goal that we're working for. The overall goal, though, really is the third one. It's to have fun developing new skills and making new friends. One of the really neat things about being on these teams is that they make what can be sort of an individual activity a real team activity. And that is one of the things I think that people who have participated in this universally love, is the fact that it's not just you by yourself. You're part of a team of like-minded people, and you're helping each other. In the contests, only the juniors are allowed on the range there. So while the adults can kind of help build up and coach in advance and help you develop once you get out on the field, it's you and your teammates. So what we thought we would do over the next few months is just try to follow the basic plan that we've got here on the charts. And I'll send out copies of these to everybody after this meeting is over. But the first is to introduce the ideas. That's really what this is. The kickoff, the organizational meeting. And we're experimenting. So we want your feedback, your ideas to Coach Robin and to me. What we thought we would do is, together as a group, we build and fly an introductory scale model. We're going to talk about those more in just a minute, exactly what that is. It will be from a kit to kind of help everybody get started. Then I thought we would do a more complicated scale model, which is really good for learning skills. We're not going to use that particular one in any competition or anything, but it'll really help drive your skills. And we're going to learn how the models will be judged. Then we'll actually build and fly the models that we're going to enter in the fly-offs. And this will be over a period of the next 6 months that we'll be doing all of this. We'll learn about altimeters and how there's a lot of strategy in actually flying these things out on the field, what's going on in the actual competition. And then we want to help you practice and fly both individually and with Coach Robin and with clubs in the Maryland and Virginia area. So, because like everything else, practicing is an essential part of becoming really comfortable and really good at this. So the topics that we wanted to cover quickly here are, what is a model rocket competition? What is an international competition? And what's the US team all about? I've already covered a lot of that people build models, as a hobby, as a means for education, and over the sport of model rocketry, was invented about the time the first Earth satellites were launched, and a lot of people were interested in learning about that, and it led to a lot of people building their own rocket engines, which turned out to be very dangerous. There were a lot of injuries and even some fatalities from people who were trying to make their own rocket motors. And so this sport of model rocketry was invented, and the key to making it safe is these pre-manufactured motors that are fired once and then thrown away. And they're really what makes it safe, reliable, and accessible to everybody. built around that. You know, anytime people get together and do stuff, they naturally start to have competitions. And in the rocket business, there are duration goals with parachute duration or streamer. There's altitude competitions. There's carrying an egg and bringing it back unbroken. There are rocket boosted glider competitions. But what we're talking about here today is going to be what we call scale modeling, which is a miniature replica. Before we talk about that, I mentioned that the international competitions are held every 2 years. There's a world body that organizes those. You'll hear about it. It's called the FAI, or French word, Fédération Aéronautique Internationale. And they're the body that organizes the contests. And there's a US organization called the National Association of Rocketry, or NAR, that is the US branch of that. And the US, the NAR, organizes and sends a team to every one of these competitions. So every 2 years, a team goes overseas. There's the last cycle, the competition was in Romania, and because of the COVID pandemic, it had to be rescheduled, and there was a lot of complications to it, and it was a much smaller participation. They did finally hold it in October, and the competition was safe and successful, but it was much smaller than it had been in the past. And I think everybody's excited to get back to 2023 when it's going to be, as I said, in the United States. So what we want to talk about here is scale modeling, which is building replicas of real rockets. And it literally is dimensionally scaled down. It's like if you took something and put it into a Muppet enlarger, right? That could, a Xerox machine that could make things smaller in 3 dimensions. That's what it is. And so you start out with some sort of plans for the real rocket, and you have some factor, like your model will be 1/10 the size, or 1/4 the size, or 1/100th the size of the real rocket. And you'll scale everything down to the model dimensions, and then you'll build the replica to be as much like the original as you possibly can. And then the things that turn out to be important in that is, you know, craftsmanship, how nicely built it is, accuracy, how accurately does it conform. Coach Robin, in the fire kit that she prepared for everybody, there's a set of calipers, which is a measuring device, which turns out to be very important for the kinds of models we're going to be building. You'll use those calipers in over the next few months in this. The degree of difficulty, these things are judged on how hard they are. The flight, how well they fly, and then the altitude. They actually measure the altitude and they add it to the score for all those other things to determine the rankings. And the pictures I put in here are of the first U.S. junior to win a gold medal in this, a young woman named Alyssa, who won. This was at a contest in 2014 in Bulgaria, and she won the gold medal, which was the first time in the whole history of the competitions, which went back like 50 years, that any American junior had ever won a gold medal in this particular division. And the picture in the middle is the junior team assembling their models out on the field. They had a couple of different types of rockets that they had built, and you can see them working together as they're preparing the models for flight. And then you go out and you get 3 chances to fly it, and they take the best flight to determine the winner. So the next question is, so what do you build? And there are hundreds of rockets, right? And a few of them are just shown here. The right-hand side is just a poster. The internet, of course, is a great source for this information. And it kind of shows you the differing sizes of these things. And when you see them on the news, they kind of look like all rockets are the same size, but they're really not. They are hugely different in size. The Blue Origin that's become famous this year as they've started flying is the looks like the fourth from the top row, fourth from the left, and it's actually pretty small compared to the really large rockets down in the lower right that you hear about. The Saturn V that was the moon rocket, and NASA has a new one called the SLS, and you can see the space shuttle and all kinds of other rockets in there. And you can choose to build replicas of any of them or all of them. Most of the things we build in these contests end up being models of something called the sounding rocket, which is things that they launched down in Wallops Island on the Virginia coast. And that picture on the left is sort of the family of current NASA sounding rockets. Now, what we're going to be doing is two different models in our program. And the other person I wanted to introduce you to today is John Boren. John works here at Estes, and he is the guy who designs these kits that you'll be building. And I wanted him just to say hello to you and just say just a little bit about his job here at Estes, what it's like to be a rocket kit designer. How did you get into this, and what do you do? And just a very quick introduction. So I'm going to turn it over to John here. So, and then say maybe a little bit specifically about the Black Brant and the Little Joe. Just a couple of minutes here.
One of my cousins, back when I was a kid, had some rockets. I fell in love with them, and I've been doing it now for 50 years. I've competed in contests, nothing internationally, but I'm a designer. I design stuff, I build stuff, I fly stuff. I also do airplanes, but the Black Brant is just a nice, simple sport scale model. You got some 3 balsa fins at the bottom. There's a boat tail, or not a boat tail, but there's a nozzle, a vacuum. I can't even speak anymore. You have a blow molded nose cone, and then there's a tail cone that you'll see in the kit. You cut them apart, and it's just got some simple details, but it's still a very nice rocket to build. It's beautiful when it's built correctly. It flies very nicely. You'll get some skills on how to sand the fins if you want to. There's 2 different versions of the fins, if you want a scale fin or a sport scale fin. So it's a really nice, simple model, but it flies really nice. And then the other one is the Little Joe 2. It's on the right side. That one is pretty complicated, actually. The fins are built up out of about 6 or 7 pieces of balsa. You have to taper them with a sanding block. It's like a wedge shape cross section. You have to glue on some cardstock over that balsa structure, and then trim the cardstock, and then those get glued through slots that you actually have to cut into the tube. And then you go towards the top, right below the mercury capsule. You see how it tapers in? That's actually a piece of thin cardstock, like a file folder material that you're actually going to have to cut and bend around and glue together. And that's probably might even be harder to do than the fins, because when you wrap it and get the tube, there's 2 tubes. You have a small tube on top and a big tube on the outside. The silver tube is the big tube. Then there's a short section of black tube after it's painted, of course. It's just hard to get that. So you got to take a lot of time to wrap that shroud and then glue it together. And then of course you got the plastic mercury capsule, that's a challenge in itself as well.
It's a great little kit. I am just finishing building one, and it'll be a great experience for all of the students in here, because you really do learn a lot. And you were talking about how you make the fins and stuff. First of all, it's really clever when you see how when you guys get the kits and have a chance to put it together. There's a lot of neat thinking in the way it all assembles, and there's some more detail back at the back where there's plastic nozzles, and it all kind of goes together in a really interesting way that I think you guys will really enjoy building. And when we get to building these, we'll build them together, but it takes more time than we can all do together. So we'll do some sort of key steps as a group, like we'll all make one fin together in one of these sessions, and then people can go off and work on their own. There'll be a combination of getting together and sort of the virtual reality and meeting them.
You're also going to find in scale modeling the finishing of the model, the painting of it. You got to primer and sand and primer and sand and primer. You got to get the finish real nice. You got to paint it. That's going to almost be harder than the actual building of the rocket.
It really is, and that's one of the reasons I think it's great to have some of the parents involved on the call here today, because I wanted to these are some of the skills that we're going to be working on over the next few months. And I wanted to just kind of start those off with just a few, some of my things that I think are really important. And John, please chime in. John was talking about the whole painting. A lot of these are skills that will serve you well in almost anything you do, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you're going to really learn, or if you already know how to do it, you're going to refine those skills as we build these two kits together. But just a couple of quick highlights on that. The first is cutting. That some of these things, you know, there's always a list of tools you need for each of these kits, and some of them have use scissors and stuff. But one of the really, whatever you do, there will be some very sharp knives involved here. So first, that's a safety issue. It turns out it's really important that they be sharp, right?
Yeah,
a dull knife is much more dangerous than a sharp knife. A sharp knife, you can cut and make exactly the cut you want, and you can do it with very little force. A dull knife, you have to put more pressure, and it's slipping that causes the injuries. But you will need to have a sharp knife, and when it gets dull, you'll need to get a new blade. And we typically, these are they're called X-Acto knives, and
the #1 blade.
and there's a very sharp, it looks like what they actually use as a scalpel for
Pretty close.
surgical operations, and it's almost as sharp. And there's always a temptation to say, oh, I don't need that. You do need that.
You need lots of them.
You need lots of them, because when they get dull, you have to change the blade.
It's the same thing when you're prepping food. If you have a sharp blade,
exactly.
you're going to cut your fingers. You're going to cut your fingers off.
It's exactly like in the kitchen.
That's why I sharpen my knife every time before I prep food.
That's exactly right. And just like prepping food, you need a good surface to cut on. It doesn't have to be expensive. Just a nice piece of surplus wood is fine, but it needs to be a smooth surface, one that you don't mind cutting on. It needs to be, something like wood, or they have you can buy these special hobby mats, because you don't want it to be too hard. You don't want it to be, just like the kitchen. You don't want it to be a stone surface, because that'll really blunt the knife.
They have a wood called MDF.
Yeah.
It's pressed wood. You can get small pieces of it at like Lowe's or the Home Depot. It will dull your knife, but it's a perfectly flat piece of wood.
Yep. The flatter is better. It doesn't have to be giant.
And you don't want grain either. So I would recommend actually MDF or a piece of MDF, and then one of those cutting mats you put on top of that, because then it's perfectly flat.
Yep.
So,
and then the third thing on the cutting is the disposal, right? Because you're going to go through these blades. They are dangerous. They are sharp, and so they can be. So having a container that you put the used, either these are going to be single edge razor blades or #1 X-Acto blades or whatever they are, some kind of container. What do you do to get rid of your blades?
Well, we have safety ones here at my house. I just throw them away. But you could also put a piece of masking tape.
Peanut butter jars and glass.
You can put a piece of masking tape over the sharp edge, and then you can dispose of them that way.
So
it helps.
So the second big thing we're going to be doing a lot of is sanding, and like the knives, it's not expensive, but you got to have the right one. You need to have sandpaper, and you can get this from hobby stores or hardware stores, and you're going to hear a lot about how rough the paper is, grit of the sandpaper, and they measure it. And so you can mark down, you should get a sheet of the 220 the 320, the 400, and the 600 grit. You don't need a whole lot more than that. I don't
even go that fine
Yeah.
personally.
Uh-huh.
Probably even 100 grit for the first shaping of the rounded of the leading edges of the balsa and stuff. And maybe even more important, you're gonna need a sanding block.
Yes, the second thing is a sanding block. What's your favorite?
Well, I use
Sanding
the,
block,
they're not
so
made anymore.
Yeah, you can make these. You can make a sanding block.
A piece of MDF, if you can cut it, a strip
Yep.
of MDF, 2-3 inches wide and maybe a foot long is all you need. And you can 3M spray, so it's 3M contact spray, and just stick a piece of sandpaper right to that, or on both sides.
It turns out that just like the sharp blade, good sandpaper is essential, and you need to clean it.
And
Or
replace
throw
it
it
when it
away.
gets done.
Yeah, exactly. It's cheap. You should throw it away.
I
You
think
should use fresh.
The key to a good, well-built model is the sanding.
Yep.
Sanding is so important.
And just like the knife, you need a good a base to do it on, a sanding board. So you need a surface.
I want to say one more thing about the knife. When it rolls off your tabletop and it starts to fall to the floor,
Mhm.
don't try and stop it. I've tried.
Yep.
And I've paid the price.
Yep, that's okay. The next thing we're going to do a lot of is gluing, and so you need a couple of different kinds of glue. Again, the kits tell you their recommended
Yeah.
things, but I think, and John just mentioned one, the spray contact cement is
Mhm.
useful for making the sanding blocks, actually. But some kind of tight bond or wood glue, that yellow glue or white glue, is important. And then cyanoacrylates. There's a couple of different brands of those, but they should be fresh because those things go stale. The tight bond, if it's sealed up, will last almost forever.
Years.
But
yeah.
the cyanoacrylates are water sensitive, and so
Moisture, yep, absolutely.
they degrade depending on how they've been stored and stuff.
Yeah.
So
And-
when you start a project, I think it's a good idea to buy a new bottle.
I have a freezer full of it myself. I build a lot, so I have a lot of it.
Yeah,
You can
his
get,
job is to build.
and my hobby at home is to build. So, but Gorilla Glue, they came out with a line
Yeah.
of CA, so that would work. Hobby Lobby carries CA glue, and then all hobby shops carry it.
Yeah.
And there's thin, medium, thick. You're probably going to use the medium the most, but there's uses for all of it.
Yep. And then the last thing is some of this 2-part 5-minute epoxy. Epoxy is a glue that doesn't dry from the air. It's a chemical reaction when you mix the 2 parts together. And then once you mix them together, it's going to what they call cure in some amount of time, right? The 5-minute epoxy means you have 5 minutes of working time. But that's what things like the Blue Origin rocket are mostly built out of, some versions of epoxies that are mixed and to put into more exotic materials. But you'll need a little bit of that for a few things in this. It probably won't use very much of it in what we're going to do, but it is essential to have some. And all of these are very generic for any kind of hobby work, but you'll need these things specifically for these models. And then the last thing is painting. And most of what we're going to do on this is going to be spray painting. And you may be super familiar with painting, and you may, or this may be the first time you've ever done sort of accurate painting. A couple of things I'd say, and then John is the master. But one is something called primer. Is that the primer is really important because it's either gray or white, and you paint the model in that color first, and it helps. It shows the detail. It helps fill little cracks or wood grains, and it gives a consistent undercolor to the model. So when you begin to put on the paint that you really care about, it all looks the same, like white paint over a red body or a black body tube or yellow Kevlar doesn't look the same. And the idea of putting down the primer is that makes the whole thing look, and it really is remarkable how it changes the impression of the model.
Changes
When you
everything.
start doing that, it changes
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Yeah, that when you get to the stage where you're putting on the primer, the model really starts.
You'll
to-
see how good you
Yeah.
built it or
Yeah.
how poorly you built it.
Yes, it's also where you really see it exposes, and you keep reworking until you're satisfied. Or so the other thing for parents, will need an area to spray. These are spray paints, and they will smell up the house. So give some thought about where you guys are going to do the painting. If you do it a lot, you set up a little spray booth, but it is something that you want to think about.
You also have to think about the temperature. Typically around
Yep.
70 degrees is the coldest you want to spray paint.
Right.
So you either heat up your garage,
Yeah.
or
The problem with painting outside is, in addition to the temperature, the wind, and so
and wind and bugs.
and bugs. So think about it ahead of time. We're not going to do any spray painting next week, but be thinking about it, because that's another area that needs parental approval, I think, of where you're going to do this. And then finally, the technique, right? I mean, it's hard to make a beautiful paint job.
Yeah.
One of the keys, I think, is always put on less than you think, right? Is you spray on very light
Well, paint
coats
wise,
to
yeah.
start, and you just do multiple coats.
Lots
instead
of light coats.
Lots
Lots
of-
of light coats.
What else do you think is key
Well,
to setting?
Well, primer,
Key.
first you have to get a sandable primer.
Yep.
You have to be able to sand it, and probably dry sand it, not wet sand, because our models are built out of cardboard and paper and balsa. So you got to find a nice primer. So you may have to go and buy a couple different ones that say sandable primer. Then the other thing I use is Bondo spot putty. It's the savior of everything out there. It comes in a little tube. It's about $4. And I typically put a coat of primer on it, and then I see all the grain in the wood, and then I Bondo spot putty just about everything on the rocket, and then sand that off, and then I spray primer, sand the primer, and Bondo primer, Bondo primer. I just go back and forth until it looks perfect.
Yep. And one of the things
Literally.
that you have to be willing to do is, this one reason it takes a long time to build these models, is you have to be willing to set it aside and let it
Let it
dry.
Let it dry.
And you can do another thing, or you can go do your homework or
Mhm.
whatever,
Yeah.
but it takes time, because you work on it in sort of small sessions. All of this will make more sense as we do it, but I wanted to call this out in our first session, because some of it requires a little prep before we just jump in. And then the last things today, and we're just about done here, is I wanted to recommend two sort of really great references, sort of homework style stuff. One is this book, The Art of Scale Model Rocketry, which actually has plans in it, but it has a lot of really good go-to stuff. And the coolest thing is, I just discovered today that it's free on the NAR website. I put the link down there on the bottom. It's out of print, but they have a PDF of it.
Nice.
I tried making some PDFs in the office yesterday, and they didn't actually come out. I was going to send those to everybody, but then I found it on the NAR website, and you should all go to that address and download that Art of Scale Model Rocketry. It is a great sort of reference book for what you're getting into. And then the other thing is, and I will try to PDF and send these out to you, is the NAR's magazine, monthly magazine. It's called Sport Rocketry. It has a lot of plans, but more importantly for this group, it has articles about some of the previous teams that have gone to these contests, including accounts by other juniors and what they liked about it. And a lot of the stuff that people love about it is not actually directly the rocket part. It's the fellowship part. It's the things that make it a real sport, and in addition to just a hobby. And so I highly recommend that. You're not required to join the National Association of Rocketry, but it is well, at least not yet.
Yeah,
By the
not
time
yet.
you by the time you get to the fly-offs, to be on, once you're on the team, you do have to join the NAR, but you don't have to join it to be in this group, is I guess what I meant to say. so that was kind of what we wanted to cover here in this first kickoff session. And I hope we, let me open it up to questions or things that people have while we have another, 5 minutes or something here. And then I'd encourage everybody to, if you have time, to watch Nicole's session on building at the top of the hour.
It's like everybody's shy.
Yes, that's okay. It's
A lot to absorb.
yeah, a lot going on. So, Coach Robin, what do you you want to kick it off or call on people?
Well, I just wanted to remind the folks that a lot of the materials that you will need are included in your Fire Rocket Challenge. I have another set of the CA. After my initial build with the CA that I purchased for the rocket team, it comes out like water.
Yes.
So I put those aside and I bought little teeny tubes, something else, but I have the big bottles that I will be bringing on Saturday to give to everybody. What we don't have is the epoxy. So you guys will need to get the epoxy. I think
You
don't need it right now.
You don't need
not
that.
right away. Okay, so we can with that. We do have mats, cutting mats at the school. So when we get ready to start building, we'll just grab those. The days that we're not going to be at the school, we'll have those. Everybody either already has their NAR membership or they have their voucher. I emailed vouchers yesterday. Please check your email if you haven't already. Fill that form out and send it back. And they will be part of the Fire Rocket NAR Team 903, I believe is our number.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so we are our own entity. And any questions either from the juniors or from parents? I know we've got a couple of parents on the line.
I want to say so. The CA glue you said you bought's real like water. You probably bought the thin CA. So take a look at the bottle. You want the medium CA. That doesn't run like water.
Okay. Yeah, we had like 14 bottles of the one that runs like water.
There are uses for the thin CA. I use it for strengthening the, like if I sand a fin so it's like comes to a point, I'll actually put thin CA on that because it hardens it like a rock.
Yep.
So there's lots of places to use it, but you'll use the medium more, let's say.
Yes, it comes in different viscosities.
Yeah.
But again, like some of the other things, that use much less than you think you're going to need initially, because it does, a little of that stuff goes a really long way.
And you don't want it oozing out all over the place.
And it gets on your fingers and then you glue yourself to the model. Now you've got a real problem.
And the one thing I actually have,
and that always happens, but everybody does that. So don't think that you're the only one.
and have a roll of toilet paper near your workstation. I use that for little rags, so wiping off glue and all that.
Paper towels, toilet paper, a lot of expendable.
Yeah, anything to wipe. But the toilet paper is really soft and flexible, and I can get in real close. So it's got to have something to wipe.
And like we said on a lot of this, you need to throw it once you've used it. You need to throw it away, because if you use it, if you've got wet glue on the rag that you're using to wipe, the next time
it gets on your finger.
Now you're putting wet glue in places you don't want it.
Because it gets on your fingers, and it gets on the rocket, it gets on the tools, it gets everywhere.
So
been there, done that.
Yeah.
And that's why we're not using the thin one. Because we did that, all 10 fingers were together by the time I finished trying to pry them apart. Camille has her hand up.
Okay, Camille.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
I was wondering if we need a caliper, if we need to get one.
There's one in your kit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, my second question is, will we be designing our own rockets for the competitions?
That's a great question. And the answer is it depends, right? What we've talked about this a lot in the sort of group, informal group that's trying to organize the team. And where we decided to start was to have everybody do the same rocket at the beginning, to do this Black Brant, because it's available as a kit, honestly. There's nothing that requires you to do that in the competition. In fact, in the competition, they want you to not use a kit. So you will eventually, absolutely, you will do your own rocket. Now, when you say design it for this particular event, it's interesting. What you're doing is designing the model, and somebody else has designed the real thing. So you're actually getting plans of the real rocket, and you're building a model of it. So the originality of this is more in how you make it rather than what it looks like when you're done.
Okay. Hi. I was also wondering if you could give me a ballpark idea of how many kits they'll end up building in the next couple months, and just in general, like, is it the kind of thing where they're going to build like 20 of the Black Brant kits to get really good at it, so they'll do it over and over and over, or is it the kind of thing where you only build?
We didn't have that.
Yeah, we don't have that. So the Black Brant is actually an out of production Estes kit. So I got all of the remaining ones here the last time I was out here. So I have 18 of them that will divvy up among the team. The plan is to build at least three rockets, right? Our first thought is that everybody would do 2 Black Brants and 1 of the Little Joe 1s. And beyond that, people should feel free to do as many more as they would like. But I think that's sort of the minimum program that we've kind of designed and put together. And we'll provide all of that. We'll provide the kits and the motors that fly those. But people are certainly encouraged to build as many more as you want. The Black Brant, because it's out of production, there may still be some in hobby stores and stuff, but you won't be building 18 of them.
I see. Okay, thanks. I think Camille managed to buy one at the hobby store here in Alexandria a couple weeks ago.
Perfect.
So do you want me to go clean them out? Do you need agents on the ground looking for these things?
I'm sure they would appreciate that. It's certainly not a requirement of this group. I would say probably if you've got one, do that. I think it's a great starter. I also think you'll want the variety of other things pretty quickly. And the cool thing is this book, this Art of Scale Model Rocketry, has in the back plans that are not they're not kits, right? They're plans for how to build a whole bunch of different models. They're not just focused on the scale altitude part. There's a separate competition just for pure scale where it's not judged on height. But the one we're talking about here, what they call S5, is height as well as how the craftsmanship and the accuracy.
Just, I want to ask questions. Does anybody here ever do, this is kind of advanced stuff. You ever wood lathe? You ever see a wood lathe? You ever see a wood lathe being used? Have access to a wood lathe? Does your school have a wood lathe? A shop class?
Can you tell me what that is? What's a wood lathe?
Okay.
A lathe, L-A-T-H-E. It's
a device where you're going to put a block of balsa, let's say, or a piece of wood between one side that's got a motor on it, and the other side basically it's a spindle, and it rotates, and then you have a cutting blade, a tool,
shop class would have it. Wood,
Yeah, a wood
a
shop
wood
class.
shop class
Okay.
would have one.
I have one, but
But-
it's used, you could make your own nose cones out of
Yeah.
wood. The other thing, this is probably well beyond, is 3D printers.
Yeah.
You can buy those for a couple $100 now.
The schools have those too.
Schools, libraries have them. If anybody here has some simple, there's a lot of simple CAD programs out there you can download that are free. So you can create a nose cone and then 3D print it. These are other options.
Yep.
These are advanced options. This is all the stuff I
Yeah.
use when I create
The-
stuff for Estes, especially 3D
The
printers.
3D printing has posed a lot of competitive challenges too, because if you're, are you really building it? I mean, for right now, making parts out of,
Well, you
3D
still have to
printing is great.
design it, and that's almost as hard as
Yeah.
building something.
exactly.
So okay, sounds
Yeah.
like nobody has experience with either of those, but you may.
I
Maybe
bet well, like you say, the shop,
Oh.
the school probably has a shop
Yeah.
and probably has a 3D printer.
And luckily, a lot of these rockets you'll be doing for the competition, they're simple round rockets, a
Right.
simple nose cone. It's nothing elaborate.
So neither of those is required for what we're going to
No,
be doing here
No, I was just
together,
curious.
but they are part of as you get more advanced in this.
I dropped the link for the Art of Scale Model Rocketry book in the chat.
Great.
Everybody click on that, make sure you download the copy to your hard drive.
Any other questions?
Well, we're going to wrap it up here then. I hope that I hope this has been an interesting introduction for folks, and Coach Robin, I'm sure we'll all be talking a lot more.
You want to pick this here?
Oh yeah, we meant to.
At least that one.
Why don't we? Let me just stop sharing just as a that John. Why? Thank you. This was the model of the Arcus, which is another one of those small. It's Black Brant like
Sounding rocket.
sounding
Yeah.
rocket, and then this is the Little Joe 2, which is a real masterpiece. Little Joe 1, sorry,
Joe one.
of kit design that John did, and this is really a cool design. You can see the Mercury capsule is plastic parts, so you have to assemble that with plastic cement. The fins are paper, basically paper and wood, and it's kind of an origami project in those. And then the back end has the different rocket nozzles and things. So it's a lot of fun. I mean, this is a really nice little, it's challenging, but it's all about, this is all about learning. And this is going to be a great little learning piece.
Very cool.
And with that, we're going to let everybody go because we're going to go watch Nicole's presentation, and I hope some of you will too.
Yeah, I do. I am. One quick question. Do we know when we'll have the rockets in our hands and when we're actually opening glue and putting stuff together?
Well, yeah, you and I need to decide when you want to have that first building session, but the rockets are sitting in my office. So anytime you want to do it, particularly if the, it's basically, I can either mail them to you or we can talk offline about whether you want me to send them to you or send them to each person individually. Let's talk about that, but we've got them. So
Sounds great. I'm ready to jump off the plane tomorrow afternoon. I'd say tomorrow evening we can get started.
that's great.
We might give you a little bit of time. We'll let you have until Thursday, but that's all right.
I'm not back till Thursday night. So, okay. And the Novar launch is scheduled for Saturday, right? Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's a Novar launch at Great Meadows 10 to 3. I think it's supposed to be really warm. So I would encourage everybody who can make that launch to come out. I know it's a little bit of a trek from Maryland over there, but it's
But Camila, I think Camila is scheduled to fly with Trip at
Yeah,
that
that'd be
one.
great.
He's mentoring her in her other 3 events.
Super. Okay.
All righty, thanks, everybody.
We'll talk to everybody later. Thank you, John.
Thanks.
for-
Thanks,
for-
John and John.
Yep.
Thank you so